On today's episode of Locked On Wilds, there's a chance that Marco Rossi never leaves the Minnesota Wild roster.
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day, and we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we'll take a look at the latest in the Marco Rossi ongoing saga between the Minnesota Wild and the young center. Sounds as though the market is a little on the dry side. We'll talk about whether or not this all just ends with the Wild circling back and signing Rossi to an amenable deal for him. We'll also take a look at the Buffalo Sabres, who now it turns out are maybe listening to offers on young JJ Peterka. Talk about where he could potentially fit on the roster if it comes to that. And we'll look at what is left in a mostly barren center landscape on the free agent market, because a lot of players that are re-upping or are way too expensive. Are there potential names to even consider on the center market? My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild, host of Seth on Sports, and credentialed media member, joined by Alex Micheletti here today. And Alex, we had a completely different set of topics for today's show before the news that you keyed me in on over the weekend, which we'll talk about more in segment number 2. But in just kind of looking at some of the latest from Michael Russo in his recent article and in some of his recent podcast appearances as well, this Rossi saga continues to leave no stone unturned, because now kind of the general direction that things are moving in is the market has not been as robust as had been hoped, because there aren't a ton of teams that are in sell mode, so to speak. So you have teams that are mostly wanting to hang on to assets. Number 2, Bill Guerin's desire to get something tangible in return for Rossi as opposed to draft picks. Something that can... The quote that has made the rounds from Guerin is, "I'm not going to make a trade that makes the team worse." And taking Rossi off the roster in exchange for draft picks, for prospects, does make you worse now. So you couple those two factors together. You couple the few teams that we have heard are kind of so-so on the asking price and on what he would need, because whatever team acquires him, you're not just going to get him for like a year or two. You're going to lock him in to be part of the group going forward. So you couple all these factors together, and now we have circled back. Like you see those memes where you kind of start at the top and you have the arrows that go through different scenarios all the way back up to the top. We at least have the potential for this to come full circle and have Rossi sign a short-term deal to stay with Minnesota, because there just isn't what Bill Guerin is looking for out there in the first place. So longer, like, what do we think the chance is that this just ends with Bill Guerin saying, I could have handled that better. Please stay.
Yeah, the Rossi camp is in a hard spot too, right, though? Because they don't want him to be stuck on the fourth line, and that's where he was to end the season. So how are they, how is that relationship going to really change, come the fall? So, I mean, do you wait? Do you hope that an offer sheet comes? Do you wait and say, hey, we're going to see if that does come, because then if it does, then it really puts the ball in Bill Guerin's court to say, hey, are you gonna match this? What what a team is offering? Because I still think with Vancouver, if you look at their depth chart, they just have a gigantic black hole for their second center, and they still don't know what they're going to do with Elias Pettersson, because he has a no trade clause that kicks in soon. So are they going to trade him or not too? So they have a lot to figure out. And Bill Guerin has worked with Jim Rutherford in the past in Pittsburgh there. So that still seems like a logical trade partner. I know they probably don't have the best assets to give back to the Wild, but at some point you want to get something for him, right?
Yeah.
You have to get something for him. He had 60 points plus points there, in a difficult spot a lot of the times this season. So yeah, we'll see. It's kind of to be continued. We hope that Florida wraps this thing up on Tuesday. That would be really nice, because then business can really start to get moving for the rest of the league.
Yeah, because there's plenty of business with the NHL draft coming up here in 2 weeks. There's plenty of business to be had around the league, because you've got, you have all these different sweepstakes that are going on. You've got the Mitch Marner sweepstakes. You got the Sam Bennett sweepstakes. And I'll kind of circle around to two possibilities for this that I think are the most likely. Like you hit on the offer sheet. I think there will be a team that has become so enamored with acquiring a center that bids on Sam Bennett, or is willing to offer on Sam Bennett. Now, whether he leaves Florida or not is one thing. But I feel like there's going to be a team that gets involved after they lose out on Bennett. I think that's one. I think there will be a team that, like you mentioned with Vancouver. Mm-hmm. The other team that I kind of circle, or am going to circle, is, how about the Seattle Kraken? Like, not as a potential fit, like for what they could offer per se. But you look at their roster, and you've got Matty Beniers, who he's a young guy, 22 years old. Your center depth beyond that, you've got Chandler Stevenson, who is a massive disappointment for what he's making as far as the salary goes. You've got a guy in Jared McCann who has been on the block as well. You've got Shane Wright, who is 21 years old. If it's me, if I am the GM, especially a new GM,
new head
for
coach,
the Seattle Kraken, new head coach, I'm looking to shore up down the middle. And I know Shane Wright had a pretty dang good year. I want to say he had right around 16, 17 goals.
Yeah, he was great
for the Kraken this past year. But if you could find a way to get the likes of Rossi in that mix, and all of a sudden then you've got Matty Beniers, you've got Shane Wright, you got Marco Rossi as your center depth. That's how I would do it. Now you look at what Seattle has as assets available for this upcoming draft. So for the 2025 draft, they have 2 second-round picks, 2 fourth-round picks. Yeah, okay, they've got the draft picks, but like we just said, that doesn't really help you. They have 2 first-round picks in 2026. They have 2 firsts and 2 seconds in 2027. But hear me out on this. this may have to become a 3-teamer because I feel like there's an easy way to just point to teams that have prospects available.
I have another team too. Carolina, they like to take massive swings as we've seen. They tried to make Rantanen work and he did not want to be there at all. But they're gonna try to be involved in the Mitch Marner sweepstakes. And a lot of people think he's gonna end up on a Western Conference team. But Carolina likes to throw their name in the mix there, and they have a lot of assets to give up as well, and Rossi would be a good fit for them down the middle as well.
And do you maybe and Carolina would be a team too where what they are going to give up would be something off of their roster.
Right?
More
NHL ready, yeah.
I like where your head's at, and I'm again, just as we continue to kind of go through this until it either happens or doesn't. I'm gonna do some digging on Seattle because it just feels like with a new general manager,
they're at a crossroads, right? It's crazy that they've had so many coaching changes within a short period of time. I thought Dave Haxtell was actually doing a pretty good job there. I don't know why he got fired, but Ron Francis, it seemed like he kind of just got lost there for a bit, and thank goodness he made the decision to hand the reins off to someone else because it was time, and they haven't had great goaltending too. That if you don't have great goaltending, it starts that goaltending is the most important position, and the Cord Grubauer tandem did not work at all.
No, it did not. And we talk about Seattle as having picks available to move. Well, I've got a team that has a certain young player on the roster that maybe doesn't want to be in that particular destination. That maybe makes this an intriguing 3-team trade. We got some new details on the JJ Peterka sweepstakes over the weekend. We'll talk about that as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where on earth did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So stop just managing your money and start building actual wealth. My favorite part is I used to have multiple apps for multiple credit cards, checking accounts, investments. Now you can get everything in one place. I don't have to remember passwords for 6 different apps. I can get a detailed breakdown of everything going on in one place. And it is such a detailed breakdown for Monarch Money. I never question where any cent goes anymore. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Ladies and gentlemen, we did it. We have finally eclipsed the 3,400 subscribers mark on YouTube. So appreciate everybody who continues to follow this channel. And the numbers have been pretty great throughout the course of the offseason here. Even though we're doing a lot of what I like to call reckless speculation, at least until the offseason fully starts, we're putting out some pretty good think pieces, I like to say. So appreciate everybody tuning in as you do each and every day of the week. Now, Alex, you keyed me in on this over the weekend because on the latest 32 Thoughts podcast, there was some interesting discussion, to say the least, regarding JJ Peterka. And we have known the link to the Minnesota Wild pretty much the entire offseason. As a team also trying to find a taker for a young asset. But it seemed like the reports kind of went cold for a while. That, it doesn't look like Buffalo is necessarily going to doesn't look like they're necessarily going to move him at this point. Well, over the weekend, on latest 32 Thoughts, sounds as though they're open for business, and Buffalo is at least listening to offers for the young winger who has put up some pretty good numbers that I'll get to here in just a second. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on Buffalo first off, opening the doors potentially for a trade.
Yeah, like you said, at points they probably thought that no, that these players are happy, they're fine, but they're listening to the players and the agents of the players, and like Peterka, he's not happy where he's at, and so they're at the point where, hey, we have to get assets for this guy, because he's clearly got he's not plateauing, he's going up, and he's got a ton of goal scoring prowess, as you mentioned here in a little bit, and he'd be the perfect fit for this Wild team. Great, on the power play and scoring winger. He has played some center in the past, but more likely to be a winger. But they need another scorer, as we saw in the playoffs.
Yeah. That
was a missing element, and when you're relying on Freddie Gaudreau to be in the top six, and I know Marcus Johansson was playing a little bit better towards the end of the season. You can't depend on that for a full season, and clearly in the playoffs, and Peterka, could give you that boost, especially as we know how, fragile this Wild team can be at times too. That's another, depth, add to the depth of the forward group. And so, as we've known, his name has been out there as somebody that the Wild have been interested all off season as well.
So here's where Peterka, who had 27 goals, 41 assists, he had 68 total points in 77 games this past season. And here's where he ranks. Here's where his numbers would rank if he would have been on the 2024-2025 roster. Shots on goal. He had 173 shots on goal. That would have put him second on the team behind Matt Boldy. That would have put him third had Kirill Kaprizov taken what he did in the first half of the season and translated that out to the second half. So second, officially, technically, probably more like third. Goals, he was tied for first with Boldy. Points, he was second. Power play goals, he was tied for second. Power play points, he was second. Offensive point shares, he would have been first on the team in that mark. Defensive point shares, he would have been eighth amongst forwards. So I've seen people point out that he's not great defensively, and he may not be. But again, where does the problem lie? The problem lies with not having enough offensive dynamics at the top of the lineup. And this is something that we have pointed to for basically since the 2021-2022 season, is you just don't have enough legitimate scoring guys at the top of the lineup. So when you go up against teams ahead of you in the division who have two or three lines that they can throw at you, if they can stop the top line, they got you. And that's that's pretty much as simple as it is. And look at what happened against the Vegas Golden Knights. Is the Wild did a good job of containing the top line early in the series, and the other lines did their job. And then once the Wild started to devote attention to the second, third, and fourth line, then the top line took over. And on the flip side, for Vegas, once they figured out how to slow down Boldy and Kaprizov, there was nobody else other than Ryan Hartman who was consistently stepping up to score goals in that series. So you need more options at the top if you're going to put together a roster that's got 2 or 3 lines that you can throw at teams.
And I was hearing from people yesterday saying, why would the Wild want to give up a Rossi or an Ogren? Look, they don't trust Rossi. Clearly, they don't trust him. And Ogren, if they trusted him, he would have been playing late in the season and against Vegas. They clearly needed help, but they didn't think he would be ready to go. And that falls on the Wild too, I think, with their development to clearly look at Iowa. And Iowa was a mess. He was playing better in Iowa, but they still didn't trust him. Now, it's always going to haunt, Wild fans and, for the rest of the time, if Jimmy Snuggerud turns into a superstar and they took Ogren over him. And, it was great to get Brock Faber for Fiala, but, Ogren was that other piece, ended up being that other piece from that deal. And so, it doesn't seem like they 100% believe in Ogren either. So if you have to give him up for someone that is already proven, like you read off his numbers, and he wants to be in a place where he has an opportunity to make the playoffs. They aren't making the playoffs in Buffalo right now. It's a train wreck. I can't imagine mentally how tough that's got to be to continue year after year to miss the playoffs. Same thing with Tage Thompson. It doesn't seem like they want to trade him at all. Obviously, he'd be the number one fit for the Wild. They would have to blow them away with an offer for Tage. But yeah, it's tough for all those guys, Alex Tuck and everybody in Buffalo that is a proven player.
I'm going to do an exercise here that I think will help further illustrate my point. In the last 3 seasons, JJ Peterka has scored a total of 67 goals. I wonder what the numbers are for particular Minnesota Wild players in that same span. How many players have scored 67 goals in that same span? And that includes the 2022-2023 season, 23-24, and 24-25. So let's go back to the beginning of the 2022 season and see how many Minnesota Wild players have 67 goals in that span. Kirill Kaprizov has 111 to lead the way. Matt Boldy has 87. Joel Eriksson Ek has 67. That's it. That's the list. Those 3 players have 67 goals in the past 3 seasons. Matt Zuccarello is close at 53, but beyond that, Hartman with 47. Rossi has 45. Freddie Gaudreau has 42. Marcus Foligno has 31, and so on and so forth. But 3 players that can say that they have equaled that same number by JJ Peterka in that same span.
And he's 23. It's always, we're always hearing it that, hey, Bill Guerin loves the old guys, the 35 plus, and Peterka's 23, and he's only going to continue to get better, and he wants to win, and so this would be the perfect spot for him. You could play him on that first line next to Kaprizov, or put him on that second line, and look at how good that second line would be, right? That would be incredible. You can put him on the power play as well, and be a giant asset there to especially with the way he likes to shoot the puck as well. And they're there has to be some changes with this team. You can't continue to go back to the well and with the same players every single year here. And I heard a interesting thought from Russo this past week too, and he's talking to all these agents and players that are potentially to be free agents, and they look at Minnesota and they see a team that just can never get over the hump, and why would they want to join? So they have to change that perception too.
Yeah.
And, clearly it looks like, even though I joked with you about this too, the one time they start to have money, the buyouts are almost completely gone, and now they still don't have enough money to get Sam Bennett. If he does not stick with Florida, and take it, if he takes a discount with Florida, obviously, but if he doesn't and it tries to try to go for that 10-11 million, and they still can't get who they ultimately want in free agency right now. It's it's just the irony of that is something else.
Yeah. And it's pretty clear at this point that Brock Nelson was the number one option for Bill Guerin.
100%.
Unquestioned. That is the number one option that he had on the board. Because
had him at the Four Nations.
Yep. I'm sure he looked at the board as we're about to here in the final segment and saw that there just is not a lot outside the top guys, and the top guys are going to be too expensive. But as we've talked about, having Freddie Gaudreau as your second line center in the playoffs, that did not work.
A train wreck. He doesn't shoot the puck.
Let's give Ryan Hartman full credit here, because part of the reason that Marco Rossi got bumped down in the lineup is because Ryan Hartman deserved a promotion.
Yeah. He's a playoff type of player. That's
But I will also say I still have no idea why Freddie Gaudreau was playing that high in the lineup to begin with.
Made no sense. And you keep hearing that they trust those veterans over other players. It made no sense. And the Gus Nyquist, whoever thought that, the professional scouts, not the amateur scouting, but the pro scouts, whoever was watching him and thought, hey, this is the same Gus Nyquist that we had the first time, that clearly he was not the same player. And I know people hate plus minus, but you saw he was like a minus 20, and just he made mistake after mistake, and he cost. I think he cost them the Vegas series.
100%.
If he would have stayed on sides, I think they end up winning that series. And I mean, you saw the next, Vegas just got smoked by Edmonton. And at times, the Wild did outplay the Vegas Golden Knights, and they made Adin Hill look silly at points, but ultimately they did lose the series. But you can't have that many mistakes in the postseason to get outcoached, and you have to have the right personnel playing too, in spots that they should be in, not elevated in spots that they shouldn't be. And we'll see if that continues with Marcus Johansson, with him being re-signed. But and same thing with Freddie Gaudreau. You're better. He better be on the fourth line.
Maybe the pro scout was playing solitaire at the games that he was watching Gustav Nyquist.
If you look at the reports of Nashville now, it's getting even more grim. I saw a report earlier that they don't think they're good enough to be in the playoffs, and they made all those moves, and so that they're gonna punt the season already, which is wild to think.
Wow.
Poor Andrew Brunette and Darby, who's hitched with Bruno there. They swung for the fences, and chemistry matters so much. You can have the best quote unquote team on paper, but if the chemistry isn't there, you're in for a long season.
Yeah. We're going to finish the show today by just looking at the free agent center options to see who even would represent a top 6 upgrade at this point. And I'll give you a hint. Not many, but we'll dive into the list as we finish today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. A reminder, we've got another live show coming up for you tonight at 8 p.m. Some trade options to discuss. Denny has put together an exhaustive list of teams and players, and we will react to every single one of them here this evening. So make sure to tune in 8 p.m. on YouTube. We'll be ready to rock, rain or shine, right here on YouTube on Locked On Wild. All right, Alex, let's go through this list, and I'm gonna cross people off as we go, because some of these players are going to be too expensive. Some of these players are just not likely to leave their current team. Some of these players are probably going to just retire because there are some players who have been around for quite a long time. And the list, courtesy of Spot Track, is organized by previous AAV. So we start with John Tavares at $11 million. John Tavares has been in the league for 15 years. He is with his hometown team, the Toronto Maple Leafs. So at the age of 34, soon to be 35, playing with the team he always dreamed that he would play with, pencil me in for the odds of him leaving Toronto for Minnesota at a 0. Like, I just don't see.
We heard his name, and yeah, it makes zero sense at all. He's going to do anything it takes to try to stay there.
Yeah. Nicholas Backstrom is on the list. If he comes back, again, longtime member of the Washington Capitals. He's been in the league for 16 years. He's 37 and a half. Previous AAV of 9.2. Is he going to leave his current spot for Minnesota? And I believe he's got he has injury concerns, does he not?
He retired, actually. I don't know why they put him on those lists, but
thank you, Spot Track, for making me look like an idiot right now.
Yeah, him and TJ Oshie are done. It's it's a new era in Washington. There, they basically, their cores of what's left of it is John Carlson and Ovechkin and Tom Wilson. But they've started new young core there. But Nick Backstrom ran into that dreaded hip surgery, and some can come back from it, like a la Patrick Kane, but some others can't. Nick Backstrom and Ryan Kessler, that have had that dreaded hip surgery that you just can't skate like you did before, or skate at all.
So I'm going to use the Major League reference for that. Cross him off then. Claude Giroux, 17 years in the league with the Ottawa Senators, his hometown team. The odds of him leaving Ottawa to come to Minnesota, 0. Mikael Granlund at 33. He is, I think, more of a second line guy than anything, but
it ended bad here. I don't see why he would want to come back. He's clearly, had success elsewhere. I don't see him ever wanting to come back.
Christian Dvorak. No.
He's had injury concerns, and it doesn't seem like the right fit here at all. And I don't. His career's gone really downhill fast for me.
Yeah. Sam Bennett, again, full bidding war for his services. You're going to have teams that are offering between $8, $9, $10 million a year. Minnesota Wild can't match that. So Bennett, the one guy that we have talked about so far that would actually represent what the Wild need. Not probably. I do not think, I will be shocked if he were to come here under any circumstances. Andreas Athanasiou, no. Robbie Fabry of
injuries,
the Anaheim Ducks,
multiple ACL injuries. Yeah. That's a red flag.
Brandon Tanev is a no. Radek Faksa is a no. We talked about Matt Duchene. He would be on a short-term deal. He would be fine. Jack Roslovic.
He has skill, but he's another guy that's you call him a jag, just a guy. He kind of he flashes every once in a while, but I don't see it as an 82 season type guy in playoffs. It's he's had skill, but that's a no.
Luke Cunnin is a no. Sean Corrali is a no. Lars Eller is a no. Trent Frederick is a bottom six. Mason
and he's done nothing for Edmonton. Nothing. Yeah. That was a misfire by Stan Bowman.
So the point being is that we know I've gotten substantially into this list, and shocker, there are no guys out there that fill what the Wild continue to need other than the one that they're trying to trade.
What's scary is the David Jiricek trade, because from what we've read and heard from especially a guy like Craig Button, who is so highly thought of in the scouting type of world, saying that Jiricek is not even a top four defenseman. He sees him more as a third pair. And when you give up that many assets for a guy and he ends up only being a third pair defenseman, that's tough. And we'll see. Maybe he can develop into that top four. The Wild better hope. And it's kind of hurting them for what they could have offered for trades this summer, and also if they wanted to go the offer sheet route, now they're missing picks that they could have used in an offer sheet.
Yeah, because your offer sheet list, at least right now, Gabe Vilardi, Mason McTavish, Cody Glass, Philip Kurashev, Ryan McLeod, Jack McBain, amongst others. That's the offer sheet route, but you can't do that. So, well, you could, as long as it's a first and a third that you're giving up and no more. But a lot of those players, I think, are going to be north of a 7 AAV. So.
Right. These other teams can beat the Wild in offer sheets too. Yeah. It's just it's crazy.
Gridlock continues. Well, again, we'll keep an eye on any trade wins, trade rumblings, the tea leaves, as we like to call them, and I use the letter T as in trade. So we'll keep an eye out, and we'll continue to keep you up to date right here on Locked On Wild. That'll do it for today's episode. Again, make sure to join us tonight at 8 p.m. Denny has a full show ready to rock for you. The one that everybody tunes into every single week for. So make sure to tune in for that, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We've got them for you every Monday through Friday. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.